Hello and welcome back to Seaside Garage. It's time to fix up another Velo. I have had quite a few of these on the channel because I love them. I might just mention that I actually won the Danish Velo Solex rally. Yeah, it's maybe 10 years ago, maybe even more than that, but it's still probably one of the proudest moments of my life. It's a race where you drive on Velos. You don't have to be fast. You have to be good at throwing a ball into a bucket and stuff like that, and not being too drunk to drive, of course. And I was able to do that. I'm very proud about that. Anyway, enough about that. If you're interested in Velo Solexes, check out the Velo Solex rally on the island of Bornholm in Denmark. If you like Velo Solexes, it's a bucket list thing. Anyway, I got this one. Actually, I got it together with the Velo VAP that I made a video about a while ago. And it's actually very original and very nice looking. This is a Velo Solex 1700. They came out in '59. This one is registered, at least in Denmark, in '61. But I'm pretty sure that they didn't even make it in '61, so it's got to be a 59 or 60 model that was registered a little bit later. This was the first Velo Solex to include a centrifugal clutch like on the Velo VAP. I think Velo Solex would have lost the battle with Velo VAP if they didn't go down that route, because that made it possible to stand still with the engine running, so you didn't have to pedal every time you stood still. That's a huge upgrade on the Velo Solex. This is the last one with the spark plug out the side. I think in 1960 there came some regulations about noise suppression on ignition systems. Velo Solex fixed that by putting the spark plug underneath the air filter and that way shielding the noise. The reason for that is the ignition system got a lot of electrical interference and can interfere with radios and stuff like that. So riding around on this old Velo Solex without that suppression system could maybe mess a little bit with mobile phones. So riding around on this will probably make this world a little better. In all seriousness, it probably wouldn't do anything. But I think if you drove this past a old school radio, you'll probably hear some interference. But it's pretty original. There's a cracked fin in the cylinder head. But other than that, it seems in pretty decent condition, considering that this is around 65 years old. But let's see if I can make this thing run. That could be pretty nice. So the first thing that I want to check on this old Velo Solex is if the engine is seized. And an easy way to do that is to just remove this cover and try to spin the engine. And it's not stuck, not at all. There's even compression. And it's actually building. That feels really nice, so I'm not worried about that. The next thing I want to do is to do something about the tires, because in order to start up this engine, I need the tires to work, because the way you start the engine is by spinning the tire. Okay, so I ended up actually getting another front tire, also old and used, but way better condition than the other one. I had a Velo that I'm currently breaking for parts, and that's the front wheel. The rear wheel, or the rim, looks all right, but the tire is also bad. I just pumped it up and it held pressure fine for 5 minutes, and then it was poof. And just to show you the inner tube from the front tire, you might notice that it got a lot of repairs. I was tempted to try to repair it until I saw the amount of repairs already there. But take a look at this. Velo Solex Luxus. That's pretty cool, but it's not savable. I'm going to remove the rear tire also, and the chain, because the chain is also very stiff. So I want to throw that into some evaporust, and then tomorrow I can continue on this. The front rim had some very bad sprockets or spokes, that's one thing. But the actual hub itself came apart when I tried to disassemble it. It just stripped out the axle, and the bolts and the actual bearing balls were completely rusted. It was just not worth it. So luckily I have some spares lying around, so that's nice. If you think it's a bit dark inside, it's because we have a power failure at the moment. Happened a few times for the last few days. Actually, the first time was the morning after the horrible press conference with Zelensky and Trump. I was slightly worried. Anyway, and the chain is off also. And this will just go into some evaporust until the morning, where I can continue the work on this. So it's the next day, and I cheated a little bit because I just put on the tires and cleaned up the chain somewhat and put that back on. So what I want to do next is to see if this thing is working. I would presume the fuel pump needs a rebuild and so on, but you never know. So I'm just going to go one step at a time. Firstly, I want to remove the spark plug. That will make it easier to turn the engine. Let's just go ahead and check for spark. I'm not seeing any spark, which is not a big surprise. I want to check if the fuel pump is working before going any further though. So I'm gonna remove the air filter just to get better access to the fuel lines on the carb and so on. Almost all the time the fuel pump needs attention on these. It's got a pump, it's not gravity fed like many mopeds. It's with a pump. Now it's missing a part of the decompression valve, or did that just fall down? So the decompression valve is not working. Hopefully I have one of those and spare somewhere. But what I want to do is to check the fuel tank condition and then put in some fuel if it's all right. It's not easy to get off. There is some old fuel in there. So I'm gonna take the fuel tank off because I really need to clean that out. Otherwise it will just keep on clogging up the system. Yeah, the lamp is not in great condition. Hopefully I have a spare one of those also. I have a lot of spares for these, luckily. Oh, very nasty looking fuel. Ugh. It's completely black. Unfortunately, I have a feeling that this is modern day fuel in here because it's really taking its toll on this fuel tank. I'm going to try to see if I can clean it up a bit. You know what, this is going to go into evaporust also. I'm just going to clean it up to remove some of all that grease, because I'm not sure this is going to be a pleasant experience running this on this. I just checked my stash of spare parts for Velo Solex, and I have a metal tank in way better condition. It's without dents, not a lot of dents at least. These tend to dent quite a lot when the Velo falls over, which happens quite a lot. So, but this is way better, it's fine inside, so I'm just gonna leave the other one in the evaporust for a couple of days, and then maybe that can go in the stash of spare parts for the future. So I'm just gonna install this one. And then I'm gonna add some fuel into this fuel tank. And now I can check if the fuel pump is working, if the lines are not clogged, that is. I give it a 5% chance of working, because in my experience they always need some kind of work before they work, because it will be gummed up. And also I tried to test for spark earlier by spinning the engine over. And if the pump was working, it would have been trying to pump that black stuff out of the fuel tank, which wasn't a very good idea, to be honest, but done is done. I'm gonna spin the engine, and if it works, then fuel will be pumping out of that. And I will be very impressed if that happens. Oh, it's actually pumping black crap out of there. I'm just gonna find something to catch it with. Okay, I was really not expecting that, but I wonder if it can pump all that bad fuel out of there. Wow, it's pumping quite impressively actually. By the way, this is not a great way to do it because I just pumped fuel into the engine also of that black stuff, but I don't think it will be too much of a problem. But I want to see clean fuel through this now. There we go. Nice and clean fuel. That is impressive. Oh, that's what I mean by Velosolex is toppling over all the time. Catch it just in time. So that is very impressive. Yeah, I might have just put in some very bad fuel into the crank casing, but it will just push it out the exhaust. I'm not too worried about it. But in hindsight, I should have removed the fuel line going there and then just pumping the fresh fuel out of that, or cleaning the entire system. The best thing would have been to take out the fuel lines, the carburetor, and all that, and just clean everything out and put it back on. But that's not how I roll. I like to revive rather than rebuild. So now it's time to focus on that spark, or missing spark. Now I want to remove this. I'm not removing the magnet. I'm just removing the cover going into the magnet. Or at least that's the plan, because I don't want to take the magnet off if I don't have to. Because it's probably just the points in there that needs to be cleaned up. Actually, look all right. Just gonna check for spark one more time. Nope, no spark. So let's just try to clean the points. I'm just gonna put some sandpaper between that and just clean it up. Some very fine grit. Got some 800 grit right here. And I just want to see if I can just open up the points. Slide it in between, like so. Yeah, there's a fine spark. You see it? That will work just fine. So you know what? I do believe that this could be all that's needed on this moped. I'm gonna install the spark plug. But as mentioned, the decompression valve is currently not working, so I'm just gonna look at my stash if I got the parts that I need for that. And amazingly, I do. So when this lever up here is pulled, it is supposed to pull in this rod, which is currently fallen out. But I can just put that in like this for now. And then when you pull it, it's supposed to throttle down and open up the decompression valve. But as you can see, it's moving the throttle opening, but it's not pushing on the decompression valve. And that is because this is missing. This is supposed to slide down onto this down there, then up, and then this part should go, I guess, like this, and then down on top of that. Like so, push this forward, and then this tiny little spring slots into the top of the decompression valve and then threads into the metal part right there. And there we go. And when I push the lever now, and that is working. The movement is very, very minor, but I think you can see it. There we go. So that's the decompression valve fixed. So unless the fuel system in the carb is clogged, it should be getting both spark and fuel, and I can feel compression, so it should start. Let's see. I'm just gently gonna use the screwdriver because it is the drill. It's not great to do that, but it's a little bit easier to film. Oh yeah! Eating all the old fuel currently, I think. There's not a lot of power made, but it's coming back to life. Woo. It wants to survive. How lovely is this? It's definitely struggling with some old fuel right now and possibly also a clogged exhaust system, but it's running. Oh yeah, not bad for the first try. Not a lot of power, but it's running. The exhaust seems a little bit clogged maybe. I think it's time to just go for a test drive and see if it becomes better. I think it will probably need a bit of an overhaul, but I think the basic engine is all right. The bearing sounds nice, and the carb I think needs a clean. And I think the jet needs a clean. It's a 38cc jet that's in it. It could probably use a bit more fuel. So let's give it a test drive. Oh yeah. I feel a bit of fuel starvation, I think, or maybe clogged exhaust. But it is running. Just trying to find the perfect setting for the car. Oh yeah. It's very, very silent, but four-stroking quite a lot. It's probably over-fueling. That could be the exhaust, I think. Whew. So back from the first test drive on this old Velo Solex 1700, and I'm impressed. Not by the speed or the pulling power, but remember this has just been dragged out of a barn where it has been put for who knows how many years. I haven't really done any work to it. I just cleaned the fuel supply and made it spark, and then it fired up, and the basic engine sounds really nice. The bearing sounds nice. It's very quiet. But there's a lot of power to be made by doing some more work to this engine. I have a suspicion that the exhaust could be clogged, or the exhaust ports could be clogged. It could also be lower in compression, but I actually don't think so. It could also be the fuel supply that is not really getting there like it's supposed to. There's a lot of potential in this engine, but that's not what this video was about. This was, will it run? And it definitely will. It's very, very willingly. It actually feels like it really wants to live, this one. It's quite amazing. They are so simple and so lovely, these small mopeds. Anyway, this will be all for this video. I might make more videos on this one. I haven't decided yet, but because I have a lot of mopeds, but it could be fun to try to reclaim the power that this engine is supposed to make. We're just gonna have to see. If you like my videos, you really should consider becoming a channel member or a Patreon. It will help me out a lot. The more I get, the more videos I will be able to make. It's not free to make these videos. I have to buy spare parts and all that. And the help that I get from Patreon and the channel member support is a big help. Consider that if you like what you see. And yeah, see you in the next one.